great morning, great evening, great afternoon, depending on where you are inside of this great, big, wonderful world. This is Stevie Aisha Mills, and you are back with us with another conversation with Stevie. The conversation is the place where we have the why uncovered while the what is discovered. And so I am absolutely excited today that we have such an amazing show for you all. To give you some background, I recently read this book. I was on this amazing team getting the word out about this book, and I wanted this beautiful, intelligent young lady to come and talk to us about the book. I'm going to give you some of her accolades, and then we're going to roll right into the questions that I know I had and that I'm sure you will have once you read this book, and we will do that today. So Marshawn Evans Daniels is a reinvention strategist, influence expert, and best-selling author known as the Godfidence coach. She is a master in teaching the art of manifestation, and she is a former sports attorney, Miss America finalist, and Donald Trump apprentice. She left her full-time job at a stuffy big firm lawyer and turned her passion for people into a multimillion-dollar enterprise just a few years ago. And so she helps women who are emerging and established influencers of faith to believe bigger, live bigger, and profit bigger so that they can ultimately give bigger. And so I want to transition right there because we all love this believe bigger message. I've fallen in love with it. But first, I want to say welcome, Marshawn, to the conversation with Stevie.
Thank you for having me. So excited to dive in, and I love talking to someone who's read the book because I learn a lot just from your feedback as well.
Yes. And I love reading the book for a lot of reasons. For one, it is truly a handbook. Like, I feel like it's the book that we all can carry through the journey of our lives. And that is exciting to me because, you know, we love the Bible, we do, but I think sometimes practicality needs to take place. I'm like, she went through it, and I could see her, touch her, feel her, and that means I can get through it too. And I love the fact that when you begin the book, you begin with a story of your life, a testimony that is truly about something that you had to overcome and the lessons that you got from that. And so it is about experience. You were about to get married. And can you delve a little bit more into that experience for us?
Sure. Well, I had graduated from law school. I was working at this really great law firm, and I decided fairly early on, I'd only been there about a year and a half, to transition out of my professional standard career, climbing the corporate legal ladder, and started my own sports agency. And it was a huge leap because, again, I was a very baby lawyer, very young. I started meeting all these professional athletes, and the partners at my firm, my mentors, they really thought that I was really being too big for my britches. So I was meeting these athletes. I felt like that was for a reason, and I couldn't bring them to my firm. So I started my own agency, and I'm in my 20s. It's called Edge 3M Sports and Entertainment, and I'm doing media, marketing, management, contract negotiation, getting these endorsements. And my first client's the highest paid defensive end in the NFL. He just signed a $62 million 7-year deal. And getting that client, doing a great job for that individual, really enabled my business to grow quickly. It became the fastest growing women-owned sports agency in less than a year. On top of that, I've just been on this show, The Apprentice. 30 million people watching every week. I've got a business book out called Skirts in the Boardroom, and I'm doing television for ESPN, Fox Business, and CNN on a regular basis. So life is really good. And on top of all of those things professionally, personally, I find myself in love and engaged. And for me, that was so much sweeter than the success stuff, all the resume and accolades. And I've been an overachiever and a striver and accomplisher for a really long time. But being engaged and then having the blessing of becoming a bonus mom to my then fiance's 3 children was like heaven for me. And it was such a endearing and awakening experience as a woman that all of those other things that I had accomplished, and even that I was kind of just really getting started and my business was growing, I was willing to close all of that down to transition to becoming a wife and a mom. And so after we had set the date, we're planning to get married, we're getting closer to that time, and I was a little bit tired from being on this book tour, managing and running a company, managing these athletes as well. So we decided that I would close my business down and I would move to Chicago and prepare to become a wife and a mom. And so, and that wasn't even a hard decision for me. It was a joyous decision. And so I found out we're getting ready for the wedding week, and it was a Monday before a Saturday wedding. And my fiancé was on the plane coming to Atlanta, and I discovered 6 days before the wedding that he was cheating on me while he was on the plane coming to see me, and I'm getting ready to go pick him up at the airport for wedding week. And that was probably the most devastating experience, moment, and just a really humbling and life-shattering thing emotionally. Something happens with infidelity that really changes a woman and causes her to question who she is, what she has always known. It punctures her intuition. It takes the breath out of her lungs. I know it did for me. And it's one thing to fall, right? But it's another thing when the person who is supposed to catch you is the same one who drops you. And that's where I found myself, was asking the question, how did I end up here? And so that's kind of what Believe Bigger opens up with, is how I discovered that my fiancé was cheating on me and kind of what I did to change and reinvent my life coming out of that.
Yes, and it's such a powerful thing that you just really are very personable, and that is appreciated in this day and age of people not being. And I remember where I was reading. I think I was in Arlington at that time on vacation. I was like, okay, let me start reading this book now. And I went to the hotel restaurant for breakfast, and I stayed there probably till about lunchtime reading the book, because I was like, oh my goodness, it was such a thing where you just truly just were vulnerable, and I appreciated that, because I didn't expect that to be the first thing to read in the book, and that kind of grounded me in the book to say, wow, I got to read the rest of this story. And I think that that's what it is. And then you get into, you know, the exercises and the purpose map, which I want to really talk about next, because a lot of people get stuck in their story. It's one thing to get stuck in a story, but if you can transition it to something where you are helping other people, that is amazing. So if you could tell us about the purpose map that could be found in Believe Bigger.
Sure. So as I tried to figure out how I ended up where I was in this place of depression and confusion and heartbreak, and again, because I closed down my business, now I'm also financially strapped, if you will. I'm financially broken and heartbroken at the same time. I don't have the energy to market. I thought maybe I should just go back and try to resurrect my sports business, but that wasn't working. And I kept hearing God say, be still, rest, spend time with me. And I'm like, well, what am I going to tell the mortgage company? And I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills now. I don't have my business anymore. And he said to be still. And what I noticed was that these speaking engagements and opportunities were coming in, and not a crazy amount, but enough to provide and supply all of my needs that were met. So I could focus on healing. And as I was spending time learning myself, going to counseling, getting clear about why I was in this place. It wasn't like, why did this happen to me from a woe is me standpoint, but when you realize that your life is not your own, you ask the question of why in a different way. And I wanted to know why I needed to have this experience, because clearly this was not a normal encounter for me, for my family, for my friends, or even for him. it was just so dramatic of an explosion and a breakup. I mean, people get cheated on every day. This ripped a hole in my entire family. It had ripple effects in my friends, in my family, and even professionally with people. And I wondered, like, God, why did this impact people? We're so desensitized to something like this. So why was this so shaking, earth-shattering? And I mean, I had girlfriends who they were in tears about this for months, if not years. And so I recognized there was something deeper happening. And as I was going through this discovery process, I started reading books about personal identity, and I was just drawn to books about intimacy with God and personal identity. And I've been following God since I was a toddler. But there was a different dimension I was recognizing about myself. And also what I want to mention that's important when you're going through a process of renewing yourself and your mind is to have fun. As I learned, and I believe that as women, we know how to smile, but we don't know how to laugh. And I was such a worker, such a striver, such an achiever, that I didn't realize that I didn't actually know myself outside of accomplishment. So anyway, as I'm learning all of these things, I start working. I needed to pay my bills, so I have this event on branding and business because that's what people were asking me about. And that event that started out with like 35 people has turned into an event where 500 women come in from around the country, really around the world, and they're investing anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 a piece. And my company has grown to be the largest coaching company for women of faith in the country. And it was during that time that I learned that in watching women change their lives and going through the process and submitting to the process, which can also be slow, of changing my own life, that I discovered these 5 stages of divine reinvention. And when I looked in the Bible, I also saw that this is not just for women, that this is universal, that these are the 5 stages of stepping into your life mission and your purpose and the assignment and the calling. When we say that we want to live a life worthy of the calling that we have received, this is what it looks like. This is the process that we will go through. And I call it the purpose map. You could look at my life, another woman's life. You could look at Jesus. You could look at Saul as he became Paul. You could look at Esther, Joseph, Jeremiah. It doesn't matter. Each one really falls into these 5 as well. So stage 1 of the purpose map is called discovery. And discovery is where we learn the rules of life, the do's and don'ts, what to do, what not to do. This is where we learn how to navigate the world according to standards and protocol. And we ask the question, who should I be? And society, our family, our friends, our churches, we get messages that give us the answer to that question. We're sponges and we soak it up. And those responses that we get become our internal navigation system, our GPS, and I call them, in Believe Bigger, the rules. Now, your rules are different than mine, but we each have them. And the rules determine also who you are. But this is also where we learn to shrink. This is where we learn to play it safe, to not color outside of the lines, a.k.a. not break the rules. In stage 2, this is the stage called talent. And in talent, we ask the question, who did I decide to be? We take our internal rule book, and it guides us and navigates us up a particular mountain. And in Believe Bigger, I outline 5 mountains that I call the 5 success mountains for women. And when you get a copy of the book, you'll see that I make this accusation, or I should say this assertion, that some women will not like, and I declare that every woman is an addict. The question is, which kind of addict are you? And we deny this. We don't believe that we have addictions, but we do. And these addictions become our identities, how we identify who we believe we are. And those also become prisons, because we are more than what we decided to be, because you can be anything you decide, but it doesn't mean it's who you were born to be. And these 5 mountains also become the masks that we wear, the labels that we identify with, and titles that we put on ourselves or that we go and get degrees to attain, mountain climbing, But titles can become idols. Labels can become fables, the inner story that we tell ourselves about who we believe we are until we believed it, and then that's all we are. But something happens in the talent stages that at a certain point we'll get discontent. We'll be dissatisfied with where we are and desire more. And if we're not careful, we'll just pick another mountain to climb. But God doesn't give us mountains to climb. He has intended, and he says in his word, that we're supposed to move the mountain, but we can't do that with our own strength. And so this is why we're not supposed to stop in stage 2. But most people, most believers, most women and men will never make it out of stage 2 in their lives. Most people will die in stage 2. But that's not the goal. That's not the intention. And the reason it happens is because we're taught in the rules, in discovery, and throughout our lives to pursue retirement. But God calls us to reinvention. He says, I make all things new. See, I'm doing a new thing. Do you not perceive it? It springs up. Because we don't perceive it, we stay where we are. And we try to make things new on a mountain that's already in existence. So that takes us into stage 3, which is called the gap. And the gap is this place of transition, a wilderness, an in-between place. It's not quite your Egypt where you've been, but it's also not your promised land where you're going. You're in this place, this middle space, and it can be a place of confusion. But it can also become a purpose purgatory where you go in circles and you wander, because you're unclear about what your next step is and what you're supposed to do. And in this place, it's very necessary. It's actually one of the most divine positions that we can be in, because this is where the emptying out happens. This is where reinvention takes place. This is where we are made a new creation. But in this shift, in this middle, I should say in the gap, this middle place, we ask the question, what is happening to me? Because it'll seem like stuff is just falling around, falling apart, issues just hitting the fan, and you're wondering, why are things changing? Why is this uncomfortable? And this is where I found myself when I faced what I talk about in Chapter 2 of Believe Bigger, called split rock moments. And each of us will encounter, and probably have encountered, split rock moments, but the thing is, we've looked at them as attacks. When the mature woman will ask the question, what if this was alignment? What if this betrayal was a necessary bridge to a greater blessing? And it's in the gap that God makes our mind, renews our mind, so that we can be transformed for the purpose of being able to transform other people. There's something about where we've been in our comfort zone that cannot get us into this place that I talk about called our glory zone in the purpose map and in Believe Bigger. So we go through the gap. If we make bigger decisions, the gap becomes a shift, which is what we want. We want to be able to move forward and not go in circles. And that will take us into stage 4, which is where God really wants us, and that is in the stage 4 is called gifts. And gifts is really ask the question, how was I really designed? How did God really design me? Remember, in stage 2, in talent, we ask the question, who did I decide to be? In stage 4, we ask the question, who was I born to be? Who am I needed? How am I needed? How am I really wired? What am I made of that I don't even know of yet? And I submit to you and Believe Bigger that you have superpowers. You have voice, a voice that you haven't even tapped into yet. Because, again, I said in the gap, you go through the transformation for the purpose of being able to transform, but you can't transform unless you have transformative abilities and gifts that are in full operation. And what if you haven't tapped into them yet? And so gifts is all about discovering who you really are, superpowers that you have, because they're needed for your assignment. There is a mission with your name on it. Your life is not your own. Your life is also a message. That's why you are not just a voice, as you will discover in Believe Bigger. You are voice. It is at the core essence of who you are and why you're here, why you're needed, why you're necessary. And once you grasp that, once you begin to delve into the new longings and ideas and desires that you will have, this is why this elevation of women in entrepreneurship is happening right now. You'll move into stage 5, which is what we are all here for. God's not a respecter of persons when it comes to this last stage, which is influence. And in influence, we ask the question, where is God now leading me? Not if, which is what most of us do as women. We have a love-hate relationship with the word leadership, influence, and impact, and even income. This, though, is what's intended for our lives. Our lives are supposed to be legacies. We are a link in a larger legacy that God is building. And the question is, where are you called to lead? Where are you called to be the link in this legacy building process that God is using to establish his kingdom on earth through you? And so influence is what we are here for. And discovering your purpose requires one that you believe bigger than what you've been through. And this purpose map is designed to give you perspective as to what you're called for and what you're here for, to help you discover your gifts and your superpowers, and to determine, where am I called to lead? You know, a lot of times we think with purpose that it's about your big why. And I think that's been one of the misteachings for a long time, for multiple generations, that it's really more about where. Where is more important than why. When you understand where God needs you, then you'll understand why he's given you these gifts. And these gifts will help you understand how you're supposed to show up and make a difference, because you're necessary. And so that is the purpose map. I discovered it as I was reinventing my life, and I wanted Believe Bigger to be a blueprint, a handbook, an inspirational guide for when life doesn't go as planned, but also some very practical things. I believe in peak performance. I believe in having a champion mindset as a competitive baton twirler growing up, being on The Apprentice, being in Miss America. I love to win, and I believe this is a season for women to win, but also to have spiritual resilience and to have practical language that we can use. You'll see in Believe Bigger the differences between purpose and calling, and I define those. What is reinvention? You'll get that defined clearly for you. Understanding what a gift is, what a superpower is, what's the difference between your talents and your gifts. All of these things are what equip you to live your calling versus just being hype about it. And we've talked about it from a hype standpoint for generations, and now it's time for us to be about it. And my prayer is that the Believe Bigger as a book, but also the purpose map, would give you a visual, because there's a fully illustrated purpose map inside of your book, and that it would give you some language, just the way we have the 5 love languages, that now we would have purpose language, that we wouldn't just know we have a purpose, but we would know exactly what it is. The last thing I'll say is that I believe it's in chapter 14. It's called Clarify Your Life Mission, and I walk you through better prayers to pray that go right after you've learned about this purpose map, right after you've gotten this language, right after you're seeing all of these different stories. But I want you to leave and know exactly what your life mission is, being able to craft it so that you can close this book. And even before you close, before you get to chapter 16, you can be able to tell your daughter, your son, your husband, your girl, your friends, and really most importantly, you can look in the mirror at yourself and know exactly what your assignment is in this world. That to me is what it means to believe bigger, is to believe in a BIG, a built-in God place that you're designed and destined for.
Wow, that's awesome, because so many times we go through the path and we're in the path, but we're like, Lord, I don't know what's going on here. So I believe it's important what you've done, and that's truly to navigate, like our GPS. I rely on GPS. Even in the city I live in, I love my GPS, and
me too.
That's what I feel. So I love the purpose map. And I do have one more question, and we'll let you go. We'll get all the information about how to get the book. But my last question is simply about the fact that you are a Christ-centered entrepreneur. Like, you wholeheartedly show Christ in your message, and I want you to really talk to people about that, because sometimes we have almost like double that. Some people they are Christ-centered, but they're scared to take that leap in their languaging and in their business. Had you always known that you were going to do that, or did you make a decision to do that?
I had zero desire to do that at all, because I didn't have any of this on my radar as a plan. I'm a planner that isn't, let me put it this way. I am a planner by necessity, but not naturally. So a lot of what I'm, like most entrepreneurs, very idea-oriented, and I get something in my mind and I just go and do it. There's a strength to that, in that you don't overanalyze. You're moving in a flow of faith, that you are operating in the real-time revelation, and sometimes you need to do that to be able to not self-sabotage yourself out of the very thing that you're supposed to be doing. But I make it very clear and believe bigger that I started this coaching lane and journey out of financial necessity. There was desire for sure, but there was not this master plan. I didn't have to overthink it. It's something about not having income to pay your bills that will definitely get you out of overthinking and into action. So I needed something I needed a win. I needed an opportunity to provide for myself. I was on my own. Now I definitely don't have a man. I had these bills from this wedding. I had the everyday bills, and I needed to figure it out. So it was literally, I emphasize this because we hyper-spiritualize so much stuff. We don't hyper-spiritualize going to work every day when we're working for somebody else. But when we work for ourselves and we want to pursue our dreams, we put so much spiritual stress on it for unnecessary reasons. And even the question about, well, what should I call this? Should I use my faith? And that's spiritual stress. It's over-analyzing. We don't put that level of stress when we're thinking about where we want to go eat on a Sunday, what shoes we want to buy, what hair we want to buy, what cars, what clothes, what houses. We don't put that much. We just assume we're supposed to experience food, clothing, and shelter and work, and we make the decisions as best we can. Yes, we pray about it, but we overstress over the things of God. And here's the reason why. I don't think we've been taught to pursue destiny. We've been taught to pursue retirement. And the same level of excellence that we put into building someone else's dream, we don't know how to do that for ourselves. So I just have always moved on something without over-planning it, and it's usually been the best. So when I started, the name of my company was Me University. I was scared. I believe at my first event we probably said an opening prayer. I'm not even sure about that. I was professionally trained that you kind of keep things a little bit separate, but I was a motivational speaker. And to me, motivation was just another form of spiritual impartation. Just I didn't use Bible language, and I'd been speaking for years. But as I started realizing that people were afraid to go into business, and I had to be more motivational, which caused the spirit inside of me to stand up. I remember in 2012 being on stage, and I had this encounter on stage that I hadn't experienced before. And now I can tell you it was the Holy Spirit saying, it was like this crossroads moment. And you've probably seen it at church before where pastors on stage and they have this thing that's planned in their text. And they are trying to decide whether they go with what's written or do they go with what's moving inside of them. I had spoken at a lot of churches, but this was a hybrid. This was a business event. It was a business and branding workshop, but it was my event. I wasn't on church. I was in somebody else's pulpit that day ministering. I was in my own environment. I had to determine, well, what do I do here? Because I have this script, which is they're here for business and branding. And I paused for a moment, and I was like, someone, I don't even know who it was, in the back row of, 200 people, something in the room that day, someone said, we need it. Keep going. And it awakened something in me, and I have to watch the video to know what I said because I wasn't operating in my own knowledge, if you will. We took a break after that, and I go backstage, and I'm walking in circles. My assistant and my, you call them armor bearer, security guard, whatever, they were one was sitting on the floor, one was leaning up against the wall. They're quiet. I'm walking in circles going, what just happened? What was that? Who was that? I didn't even know myself. This is what I mean about the transformation of being in the gap and stepping into your gift. You're going to find a version of yourself you didn't know existed. And I'm sitting there going, what just happened and who was that? And the gentleman who was in the room named Anthony, he talked to me about this cartoon and this thing called the Avatar, and how being in a different state, it wasn't that it wasn't him, it was just a higher elevated state that was something. The first time he stepped into the Avatar state, he was overwhelmed and was asking the same question. And ever since then, it was September of 2012, a lot happened that month. I met the man who later became my husband. Certainly didn't know that yet. I'd only met him about 2 weeks before this event that I was hosting and having my conference. I have this revelation on stage, and that was the beginning of me really stepping into my spiritual voice. And as we started surveying people about why they were signing up for coaching and mastermind programs, they were saying it's because you're a woman of faith. And I didn't have this plan to build this faith-based business. And I think one of the mistakes is just to do what you're seeing and what seems popular, or even what you want to do, versus going with what you're great at first and letting it evolve into what it will be. We want everything so perfectly planned. But we evolved into the Godfidence Business School, and it was when we changed to the Godfidence branding and language, it was because it was getting confirmed to me everywhere that this was the right place. I don't think that every Christian entrepreneur has to have a Christian branding, if you will, or overt Christian language. Chick-fil-A is a Christian-owned, Christian, Christ-centered company. They close down on Sundays. They don't waver from that. But they sell chicken to anybody in the world who wants to buy chicken. And they don't have crosses on the napkins. And so just because we're Christians, it doesn't mean that we have to always bathe everything from the fascia in Christian language. And it takes being guided for that. And so that's just kind of my journey into it. But I am serious about it. When I say something like God says, it's not a manipulation. I always want to be responsible for what God has given me. And that day on stage in 2012, when I was like, what just happened and who was that? I learned that there was a hybrid happening of blending faith and business and being, I don't call it so much a trailblazer, but a trail leader, of really leading those who are believers, who are developing their acumen for business and growing it and expanding it, to have a safe place where they can come to grow, to learn, to worship, and to not compromise their faith or their ambition. And most ambitious women today, they don't have a place to be spiritually pastored and mentored and developed. And that's the place that I want to step into, and that I will say I didn't want to. That's not accurate, that I have submitted to step into. And part of the thing that you'll realize is that when you have a different assignment upon your life, you're actually not going to want to accept all of it. But when you surrender to it, you're taking responsibility for where God needs you in a particular season. And you'll find, as I've surrendered, I find a joy that I didn't know I was missing out on, because we think we know what we love, but we don't know it until we're in it. And I love working with women of faith who are ambitious, who want to figure out how they can be more than what their churches, what their families, what society, and what the rules have told them, because it's time to be rule breakers. And Christ was the ultimate rule breaker. He started a rebellion, and that's what we're here to do as women as well, as Proverbs, modern-day Proverbs 31 women too.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I thought that was the last question, but I have to ask this bonus question, and I promise this will be it. But I want to make sure, because I remember on Periscope one day you were talking, and I happened to be in the comment section, and I told you my birthday, and you're like, Stevie, when the book comes out, then remind me that your birthday is October 25th. And I was like, okay.
Oh, that's right. I did say that. I was like, what was October the 25th? Yes, that's your birthday. And I said that, remind me that it's your birthday, and I'll tell you why that date is significant.
Yes, ma'am.
That was the day that I called my wedding. That was the day that my wedding was scheduled to take place.
Oh, wow.
It was October 25th. My cousin also had gotten married a year prior on that same day. And every year I call him and I tell him happy anniversary. And for the first few years, that was pretty tough because it was also a reminder. And I used to hate the number 25. It used to hurt. And now I look at October 25th as Freedom Day, as a reminder of God's grace, of how he will protect us from ourselves. And it's also a day of promise. But at the time, it wasn't my favorite day for some time. So when you said that, I was like, I'll have to tell you a little backstory between my relationship with October the 25th. But now I reclaimed it. And I look forward to those who do get their copies of Believe Bigger. You'll learn just some really beautiful turn of events of how the story ends. I won't give that away. But, of course, people can get their copy of Believe Bigger at BelieveBigger.com. It's available everywhere books are sold. Books A Million, Barnes & Noble. When you walk into a Barnes & Noble, it should be on the new releases table right in the front of the store. And I have some amazing bundles that I've created that are discounted if you buy in bundles of 3, 10, or 25. Even if you buy a single copy, you'll get a vision board workshop with the proprietary 10-step process called the Believe Bigger Vision Board Workshop. That's your gift. If you do the trio, you'll get not only the vision board workshop, but also a 21-day devotional, which people are loving. It is written by me, and it's 21 days with 4 elements: a scripture of the day, a lesson of the day, a journal assignment of the day, and also a guided prayer every day for 21 days, plus a bonus that you'll have to get the trio to find out. It's not available for purchase separately. And then if you do the 10-pack, you get all of those things, the vision board workshop, the devotional, and you'll also get a purpose map video workshop from my most recent women's conference, and it takes you deep into it. It's 90 minutes. It's a great usage of time to really get clear and working through each aspect of the purpose map. So all that's available at BelieveBigger.com. And lastly, I'll say that it's available in hardcover, as a digital book if you like your Nook or your Kindle. And it's also an audiobook and comes on audio CD. So if you like the CDs or if you want digital audio or MP3, all 3 of those versions are also available on Amazon. So it always takes me a moment to explain how you can get the book because, you know, when I wrote my last book 9 years ago, there was no Facebook. Like, Facebook was just starting. It wasn't a major player. Twitter wasn't around. So much has changed digitally. There were no audiobooks that were really a necessity. I didn't have an audiobook for my last book. So it's very exciting to be able to present Believe Bigger pretty much in every format. So there's no excuses. And then for destiny-minded women who know that it's time for them to step into their season, but they have a desire to usher others forward in theirs, the bundles are a perfect way to begin that process as well.
Awesome. And I definitely want to thank you, Marshawn, for being here today. I have held like a special place in my heart for you ever since I came across you years and years and years ago, and you have been just an amazing person. So thank you. I was blessed to be on the book launch team again, and that was something that I was like really excited about, still excited about getting this message out. So thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you. May God always bless everything you touch and speak forward. I pray it is always amplified and magnified.
Amen. And so, everybody, this has been Stevie Aisha Mills, and this has been the Conversation with Stevie. If you ever need to find me, just know how to spell my first name, Stevii. Definitely go to see Marshawn wherever she is. Go to BelieveBigger.com. Go to wherever, because I know y'all got blessed on today. I know I did, so I know you did as well. And you know what I always say, make it a great day. Do not have a great day, make it a great day. Why? Because you, and yes, you too have the power to do so. Bye for now.